It's been a while since I've talked about Mega Man, and for good reason, honestly. Look, when you play a series of games so similar to one another in semi-quick succession like classic Mega Man, you just get sick of them by the end. Aside from playing through Zero and ZX again with that Legacy collection, I've barely even played this series in the last 2.5 years. Those videos are kind of fun to look back on though, especially Mega Man and Bass, which is one of my most viewed videos for some reason. Apparently I have the wrong yet very cold take of not liking Mega Man and Bass. And also some people think 8 is worse, which is just so... what? I'm just some random guy talking about video games on the internet. Don't take me too seriously. Also, it's weird how that I can't make this joke anymore.
And Light has such a bad speech impediment that he makes me sound normal.
When we find that meteor, we'll find Dr. Wily.
It was funnier 2 years ago when my voice was worse. You know, it's actually closer to 4 years. Time is fleeting. Anyway, I've decided to descend into madness once again, but this time with Mega Man X. And if you know anything about Mega Man, you probably know about Mega Man X. For the Super Nintendo, Capcom looked at this and said, hey, what if we made this better? You know, I think they were onto something. And you probably already know that, because aside from Mega Man 2, X is probably the most talked about game in the series. For good reason, mind you, because this game kinda kicks ass. When I first played Mega Man X in like 2017, I think? Dude, I had a blast. Everything about the game just feels good. Every stage is well designed, the controls are perfect, the music is awesome, everything about Mega Man X is incredible. And odds are, you probably heard this whole thing before, which kind of puts me in a weird situation. I like talking about underappreciated games because I can say whatever I want, still feel like I said something that hasn't already been said by a billion other people. And I've reviewed popular games before, don't get me wrong, but there's just something about Mega Man X that feels like it's already been overanalyzed to hell and back. Like how the intro stage is smarter than general relativity or something. Point is, will I say anything original within the next
25
minutes? Who knows? Here's another Mega Man X review. Remember the happy-go-lucky classic Mega Man games? You remember how happy and healthy Dr. Light looked? Yeah, well, this is him now. Instead of living out his retirement in peace, he decided to work on his final invention, a Reploid. Robots that can think for themselves and make their own decisions. With the first Reploid being known as Mega Man X. But Light knew that he was gonna die before X was ready, so he made an AI of himself to watch over X and perform tests and all that junk. Cut to 100 years later in 21XX, and X is awoken by Dr. Kane, who used X's specifications to make more Reploids. But the new Reploids didn't get the same level of testing as X, so some of them bugged out and decided to go commit crimes. So many Reploids started going Maverick that they had to form the Maverick Hunters to stop them, with Sigma, Dr. Kane's most powerful Reploid, leading them. But then Sigma goes Maverick and it all falls apart. So now X and Zero, another Maverick Hunter, have to stop Sigma's plans every other week until the end of time. There is a bit more to it than that, but a lot of this stuff is explained in X4, so I'll save it until then. The game itself, though, it doesn't have much. Dr. Light explains before the title screen about how Reploids have free will and how X is the first one and all that jazz, but there isn't any kind of context as to what's happening. Some Reploids have gone Maverick and X has to stop them. Boba Fett calls himself vile in this game, and he almost beats X in a forced lost fight before Zero comes in and saves him. Like, can we talk about Zero in this game? He's one of the best characters in the franchise, but he's practically a plot device in his first appearance. I guess he's motivation for becoming stronger, like, oh ho ho, you might even become as powerful as I am. But like, Zero doesn't do anything. X does all the work. He saves X from Vile again later and gives you the arm parts if you didn't have them already, but otherwise, he just shows up occasionally and gives X a pep talk, refuses to elaborate further, and then dies. It's so bizarre that such an interesting character started out as nothing more than a guy who fires like 2 shots at Bo, but not. Oh yeah, Zero dies. Don't worry, that's gonna happen a lot. The only kind of interesting dialogue is right at the end, as X contemplates the meaning of war and why we have to fight. That we live in a society or something, I don't know. It comes off more generic than anything else. Like, they needed something against this end screen, so philosophy, yeah, that sounds good. Anyway, Sigma isn't dead, go by the next game. The story of the first Mega Man X is really basic, but it's at least better than the NES Mega Man games. They attempted something, but they didn't really do anything with it yet, which is fine, I guess. The gameplay is anything but fine, though, and you can tell just from the intro stage. It teaches you everything about the game invisibly. It's peak game design. I'm not going too deep into this, though. It's already been covered to death. But the main thing you should figure out from this stage is how wall jumping works. Wall jumping is a pretty neat ability in platformers. You know, you jump off the side of a wall to get some extra height. I have no idea how feasible this is in reality, but it's cool and fun, so who cares? But it works differently in Mega Man. It's not really so much a wall jump, more so a wall climb that you can do infinitely. And pretty soon after, you get the ability to dash, which lets you move faster and jump farther. And I was never really that into classic Mega Man. The game did control well, but it was never fun to control. You just move at a steady pace and shoot enemies. That's all well and good, but it was missing something. Wall jumping and dashing is that something. It improves the game's pacing so much. For Mega Man 3 onwards, you could slide to move faster, but you couldn't jump while using it, making it feel too clunky in my opinion. You could move faster, but part of the control was taken away from you, which didn't feel good to me. With dashing, you can not only jump while using it, but dashing also makes you jump farther than you can without it, and it even works jumping off of a wall. These two abilities not only make the skill ceiling that much higher, but they also make the level design change drastically. There's no more screen transitions except for boss doors, so there's nothing to break the pace, letting you dash as much as you need or want to. Wall jumps also let the stages be a lot more vertical. It always felt clunky with something like a Like Man stage because of how awkward all these precise jumps were. You needed to be just right with your precision, and it just didn't feel good to play. Something like Quick Man stage worked a lot better because falling felt more natural. But now, wall jumping makes these vertical sections way more fun. It just feels plain cool to jump off of everything in Bruno Kuwanger's stage. You don't even need a wall to wall jump off of something. As long as it has some kind of vertical height, it is legally a wall and it can be climbed. It's surprising just how much you can wall jump off of, even moving platforms like near the beginning of the first Sigma stage. And that's another thing, wall jumps can let you save yourself if you just barely didn't make a jump. It's a neat way to make the platforming more forgiving without making the game easier. You can even use this to dodge enemy attacks. Climbing a wall gives you a lot more room to get out of the way, and it extends your own attack reach. It's unreal just how natural wall jumping and dashing fit into the standard Mega Man gameplay. Like, these two mechanics alone completely change and improve it. Despite how different the moment-to-moment gameplay feels, the actual structure of the game is basically the same as the classic games, aside from the intro stage. You have 8 stages, each with a boss that gives you a new weapon, and each boss is weak to another boss's weapon. Finish all 8 stages and you play through a few more stages, ending with a final boss. It's a video game. But even this structure's been tweaked a bit. Your health is noticeably lower than before. That's because there's actually upgrades that you can find in each stage. Heart tanks increase your health, sub tanks let you store up health to use when you're low, and armor parts give you new abilities. Bizarrely, that dash that I mentioned before is not part of X's base moveset. You have to get it in Chill Penguin stage first. Out of everything Mega Man X does so well, this is probably the game's biggest flaw. Gaining new abilities is rad as hell. The Metroidvania elements give the game that much more flavor. But it basically means you always have to play Chill Penguin first, which is boring. There are ways around it, like you could put in a password to start with the leg parts and no Maverick is defeated, and there's a ROM hack that gives you a dash at the start. But it feels like a band-aid to a very blatant design flaw. I understand not wanting to introduce too many mechanics at once in the intro stage, but I feel like there could have been some way to introduce it without it needing to be an upgrade with a light capsule. Maybe Zero could have told you about it or something, I don't know. And at least on Super Nintendo, there's only 4 face buttons. I feel like you could have figured out that one of them makes you move faster. The other armor parts don't have too much wrong with them though. The chest parts double your defense, the arm parts let you charge your special weapons along with giving you a 3rd level buster charge, and the head parts let you headbutt these hyper-specific blocks to destroy them, and it's only used once in Flame Hammer stage to get the arm parts, and you don't even need to do that because Zero will give it to you if you don't have them anyway. So basically the head parts are only there to complete the look. You can't just walk around looking like an idiot. It's all about these sex nowadays with you kids in your drip. I don't know. The leg parts also let you destroy the same blocks by wall jumping off of them, which is only used twice. With all these extra pickups and everything, you'd think there'd be a lot more backtracking, but there really isn't. If you go in weakness order, starting with Chill Penguin like I did, you only have to backtrack like 3 times. Once back to Kuwanger stage to get the heart tank, because it bizarrely requires his own weapon to collect it. Once back to Spark Mandrill to get the sub tank, but even that's right at the beginning, so you can immediately exit. And once back to Chill Penguin to get the heart tank with a fire wave. Even then, there is some leeway in how you can get a lot of these. Like, you're supposed to use the boomerang cutter to get Spark Mandrill's heart tank, but with some well-timed dash jumps, you can get it without it. Or an Armored Armadillo stage is a lot easier to destroy these minor things with a fire wave, but you don't need it if you match the fire button enough. I think you can get some stuff with a charged shotgun ice too, it's just the weapon's a bit awkward for me to use. I'd rather just use the boomerang cutter. It's not too hard to figure out everything without a guide either. I've only played X1 twice before this, and I accidentally figured out a good route just from memory. Keep in mind that it's been like 4 years. I last played these games when the X Legacy Collection came out. All these collectibles might be a bit much to keep track of at first, but everything is so memorable that I didn't have any trouble finding anything. That makes a casual playthrough more satisfying for me. I don't have to write anything down or keep track of much. It's just easy to remember where everything is. The incredible level design absolutely helps. There isn't a bad stage in this game, and they all feel unique. My favorite's probably Armadillo because you're always moving. There's these minecarts that plow through everything, and it just feels good to ride them. It's a nice place to fill up sub-tanks and stock up on lives, too. It's just a really fun stage. I also really like Boomer Clanger and Storm Eagle. They're much more vertical than classic Mega Man could be, and you just feel like a badass climbing through these. The closest this game has to a bad stage is Launch Octopus, and even then, the only bad part is this mini-boss can suck you into spikes. Like, dude, why? Aside from that, it's still a fun stage. Like, you know how you can jump really high in water in previous games? Well, what if you could jump really high and really far? That's just what this stage is. Jump over everything. Have fun playing in the water. We are men of the sea. What I love about these stages is that clearing one stage can affect another one. After defeating Storm Eagle, the airship he was piloting crashes into Spark Mandrill's power plant, so now all the lights are out and it's harder to see. Or how beating Chill Penguin somehow causes Flame Mammoth's factory to freeze over, so you don't have to worry about the lava. That's just cool, man. I really wish they brought this back more. I don't remember if X2 or X3 did this, but I'm almost positive they dropped it completely with X4 onward, which is a shame. It's such a cool way to tie the stages together, instead of having everything being completely disconnected. The end game is great too. The same stage design extends all the way to the end, albeit a lot more basic. Like, there's no real theming or anything, it's just generic bad guy base. Feels more like a test of skill than anything else. The Sigma stages are definitely a lot harder without its special weapons, that's for sure. They weren't very useful in the main stages aside from getting items. The X-Buster is generally good enough for most situations, but there's a lot more awkward enemy placement in the Sigma stages, so the homing torpedoes are great for that. Along with a charged tornado, which even normally does pretty good damage for those tanker enemies. A charged chameleon sting also gives you temporary invincibility, so if there's a really annoying section, it's easy enough to just damage boost through it. Even the boss rush isn't annoying this time, mainly because it takes place over the course of 3 stages instead of all at once. I'd much rather it not exist at all, but I didn't mind it in this game. The bosses themselves aren't much to talk about though. If you use their weakness, most go down without much thought, especially Spark Mandrill. Like, if you have Shotgun Ice, you already won, look at this. The only main boss that still puts up a fight is Armadillo, but even he's fine once you get used to him. The endgame bosses are pretty easy to get to grips with too. The only annoying one is this spider boss. It's moving down this track and changes lanes every time there's a web between them. It's just that it moves so fast that it's hard to process what it's doing. The spider isn't too bad, it just takes some practice. I've heard the bosses are way harder Buster only, but I am a sissy baby man and I haven't done a Buster only run. Sue me. The game's an awesome time playing normally, and I do not want to ruin it trying to fight Sigma without weapons. Everyone likes to complain about how tough Sigma is, but with weapons, he's really not that hard. Not Treble is easy to get past. I don't think I've ever died to him, just spam Shotgun Ice. The second phase has Sigma dash around the place with a lightsaber. Again, pretty easy. If you've seen the DVD logo, you can figure out what he's doing. The first 2 phases are just basic pattern recognition. The third and final phase is the hard part. He's gone up into this mech thing, you have to jump onto these claws to safely damage him. But the claws also shoot thunderbolts both up and down, so you can't just camp him from his hands. The challenge with this phase isn't dodging his attacks. The challenge is hitting him to begin with. You have to get to the top of the screen to hit him. And you can't use a homing torpedo or a charged tornado either, because the X-Buster and Rolling Shield are the only weapons that can damage him. With the claws rotating around in a circle near the wall, you can't climb up there yourself without stupidly precise timing, forcing you to wait. But at the same time, you can't just stand around in the center because he'll shoot down lasers or fire from his mouth. Moving to one of the sides to dodge that leaves you open to the lightning from the claws. So you simultaneously have to be constantly moving, but also not moving much so that you can climb on top of one of the claws. It's all just a balancing act. Once everything lines into place and you get into the rhythm of staying on the upper part of the stage and consistently hit him with a rolling shield, you basically won. You'll probably die a bunch to get there, but he's a lot more manageable than people make him out to be. I'll take X1 Sigma over X4 Sigma any day. But hey, at least whenever you die and use up all your sub-tanks, it's easy enough to use a charged rolling shield to refill all your health and weapons. Plus, this spot is his own stage, so you don't have to worry about lives and you can keep retrying. It's forgiving enough to let you learn the patterns and practice until you overcome it. I like that. But we still have a remake to talk about in Maverick Hunter X. Despite how much I love Mega Man X, I never felt the need to play Maverick Hunter X before this. After remaking Mega Man 1 for the PSP, Capcom decided to remake Mega Man X while they were at it. And if you had no idea that this game existed, that just speaks volumes of how well the originals aged. I didn't look at Powered Up when I was doing the classic games, but honestly, I'm really glad I didn't, because Mega Man Powered Up is basically a janky NES game disguised as a PSP game. Despite how Mega Man 1 hasn't aged very well, they went ahead and decided to not update the game design in any significant way. I really have to wonder why. A remake is the best possible time to do this, and they included a mode where you can play the original game basically 1-to-1 without the 2 new stages, so why? It's not that Powered Up was a low-effort remake or anything. There are 11 playable characters, each with unique voice-acted dialogue. They put a lot of effort into this game. They just put that effort into the wrong places. Even the 2 new stages aren't that great. Powered Up is such a weird game to me. Mega Man 1 is fun the first time to see where it all started, but I can't fathom why I would ever want to play the game with 11 different characters. You can update the aesthetics and add all the content you want. At the end of the day, it's still Mega Man 1 with the abundance of disappearing blocks, awkward level design, and the Yellow Devil, except they removed the exploit that let you kill him near instantly. I bring all this up because Maverick Hunter X doesn't have any of these issues. The level design is still largely the same, but it didn't need updated. They added voice acting like they did in Powered Up, and it's oddly decent. I just love how mad X sounds when fighting Sigma.
Our potential is limitless.
You think you have potential? You're insane, Sigma!
That's not what you really think. You say you believe in justice, but that's not true. You've only been led to think that. Nothing more.
This stuff really adds a lot more personality to the characters. I never expected Launch Octopus to sound so sophisticated.
Maverick? How dare you call my artistic battle style by that name?
I assumed he sounded like a Splatoon character, honestly. Chill Penguin, however, sounds exactly like I thought he would.
Sigma has paid for the use of my power. Working for him is a million times better than piddling around on a South Pole with nothing to do.
Oh, and Boom and Kwanger and X used to be friends. That's pretty cool to learn. Sorry, Boomerang Kwanger. Next will tell me he's gonna go collect Thunder Eggs. Not all the voice acting is good, though. X yells out the weapon name every time he uses it, just like one of my Japanese animes. I could never remember the name of Boomer Kwanger's weapon, but trust me, that will never happen again. The anime cutscenes are cool, too. They even went out of their way to make a 20-minute long prequel explaining how Sigma went Maverick and decided to take over the world. That's insane, and it's a good watch, too. They included it in the X Legacy collection if you want to watch it in higher quality, so you're not actually missing out on that with the new X release. I'll get into this collection next time, though. There was enough to talk about already. The gameplay isn't completely one-to-one with the original. There are some things that actually mix things up a bit, like how Vile was an actual boss in the intro stage instead of a forced loss. The armor parts are in different places too. Well, they're in the same places, but the parts you get are different, like how the leg parts are in Flame Man the stage and are optional now. It's easy enough to get to since you don't need the head parts to get to the capsule anymore, but it's a weird change on paper that I actually really like in practice. Since you get the leg parts in Flame Mammoth, now we need the head parts for the sub-tank, which is in Chill Penguin. That's really convenient because you need to freeze the lava to get the heart tank. Even going in weakness order, there's still about as much backtracking as before, aside from needing the boomerang cutter for Spark Mandrill's heart tank, because apparently that super tight jump wasn't intentional. Cool. It's just a neat remix of the game. It's still Mega Man X at its core, but changed enough to be interesting. I also like how the bosses have slightly longer invincibility, so it's harder to stunlock most of them. But in some hilarious twist of irony, Spark Mandrill is easier to stunlock now. Like, they had to have known. I refuse to believe this wasn't done on purpose. Weirdly, the Sigma stages are mostly new. The levels themselves aren't too interesting, but they weren't that interesting in the original, so it evens out. At least you can just shred through the dumb vacuum fish. That felt really good, man. I also like how the spider boss got a bit of a rework. It moves slower and takes longer to start moving, giving you more time to actually process where it's gonna go. It's kinda easy now, but I'll take that over annoying any day. The weirder change is how Vile was fought at the end of Sigma 3 instead of 1. So if you didn't get the arm parts, you only have charged weapons for like 2 fights. Zero apparently gives you a different charge shot than the light capsule does, so that's cool. But I don't know why you wouldn't just get the arm parts and Sting Chameleon instead. I suppose that Zero dying right before the final fight makes it a lot more climactic. It always felt odd that he died right at the front gates. Dude's supposed to be insanely strong, but barely does anything. It feels more in character this way. Getting so far yet so close makes his non-death more impactful.
Go now, Maverick Hunter X.
I take it back, I wish Zero died sooner. They ruined the final boss though. The first two phases are basically the same, but with the third phase, you don't have to wait for the claws to come down toward you anymore, completely decimating that balancing act that I was talking about before. It turns out this fight is easy when you can consistently hit him. I wrote that part before playing Maverick Hunter X. I figured that it was my armchair game designer brain coming out. I didn't think I'd actually be right. I beat Sigma on my second try, and that's only because I wasn't paying attention the first time. So if you hated the original final boss and thought he was way too hard, you'll love this game. There's some cool extras after the credits too. There's a new game plus where you can play through every stage of all your upgrades. It's oddly satisfying to plow through the intro stage. Day of Sigma is a full-length anime episode that details how Sigma went Maverick and leads into the events of the game. It's actually a really good watch. The lip syncing is a little off at times, but that's my only major complaint. I was actually annoyed when it ended because of how into it I was. Like, no. You can't just make something this good and then only go for one episode. Day of Sigma really shows the potential for Mega Man X as an anime series. X and Zero are interesting characters, at least by X4, and there's a story here worth telling and expanding upon. Apparently the producer of the Castlevania anime is also producing the adaptation of Devil May Cry, so if Capcom is willing to do this kind of thing with their IPs, give Mega Man that treatment next. If a probably low-budget OVA produced for a video game is this good, just imagine what could be done with a standalone series. You know, it's really weird how Battle Network is the only branch of Mega Man to get a full adaptation. In fact, it got so full of an adaptation that I had to make stuff up halfway through. And while I'm on Copium, a Mega Man Zero anime would be rather sick as well. But back to the actual video game. You can even play as Vile. The obvious thing was to let you play as Zero like in later games, but they actually made a new playable character for this. That's pretty cool. The main thing with Vile is that he can't dash, but he has a different weapon for square, triangle, and circle. A Vulcan machine gun thing from his hand, a shoulder cannon that shoots diagonally upwards, and a bomb that explodes on the ground. Now, you may have noticed that all of these suck. Well, at the end of every stage, instead of one weapon, you get a myriad of new ones, including multiple different kinds of weapons for each slot. Like, maybe you don't like the Vulcan gun, so you can use this shorter range missile attack instead. This is objectively wrong, but you can. This may seem like Vile is stupidly versatile, but no. You can only pick your loadout at the start of the stage, which is kind of a bummer, but I also get it. Having this many options that you can swap to at any time would be ridiculous. And there is a weapon point system restricting you on what you can take, so it's not as overpowered as it seems. But it still doesn't take that much effort to break the game. You have way too many options, so there's bound to be at least a few that are insanely strong. Like how the Distance Needler does a lot of damage and pierces through defenses. So those Sniper Joes or those dumb launch octopus mini-bosses that suck you into the pit go down laughably easy. And it even does pretty good damage to bosses. That's probably my biggest issue with Vile's campaign. The game was already relatively easy, but Vile just makes it completely brain dead by the end. I could have tried experimenting with weapons more or something, but when you find a good weapon that keeps working, it's hard to want to try anything else, since you're gonna have to play the whole stage with it. Boss weaknesses aren't a thing either, as far as I know, so every boss goes down the same way. Bosses were still easy with their weakness, but it at least required more thought and experimentation than just holding down the square button. Shell Penguin and Storming will also increase their defense and movement speed respectively, so by the Sigma stages you're a god, especially if you got all the heart tanks and sub-tanks, which are in different places for the most part, so that's kind of interesting, along with a slightly tweaked level design, but Vile really isn't anything too special. You also have to listen to like one song pretty much the whole game, the only exception being the Sigma stages. Mega Man X's soundtrack is awesome, so why not just play this during the intro stage and then play the regular music everywhere else? And despite having to listen to this track for 2 hours straight, I can't remember it no matter how hard I try. That's just sad. Playing as one of the antagonists is cool, but even that falls apart once you get to the final boss and kick X and Zero's asses. Despite completely curb stomping them, X and Zero still win somehow. Vile just sits there while X fires a single attack at him.
On a charge shot!
Like, I don't know, dude, have you tried shooting them? I just wanted to play the alternate reality where the heroes lose. Is that too much to ask? There's no Sigma fight, which makes sense, but it just ends with a really easy boss that you lose to anyway because of plot armor. Vile is at least enjoyable, but I probably won't play his campaign again. X is just a better time. I do appreciate the effort, but it just leaves you feeling empty. Because Mega Man X is so damn good that it didn't really need a remake. Maverick Hunter X is still a good way to play the game, but it makes a few too many weird decisions to be my preferred way to play, which just speaks volumes to how well the game's aged. Like, dude, it's insane just how little I've complained about any of this, especially after playing through it 3 times for this video, and I'd still be down for another go. Mega Man X is a wonderful time, to the surprise of no one. Why do you think this game is talked about so much? Because it is an extremely good video game by the video game developer Capcom for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. I was having trouble figuring out what to even say here, but honestly, I don't really have to say anything else about Mega Man X. Video game good, like, comment, and subscribe. Tune in next time for a game that's good, but not nearly as good as this one. That's the beauty part. I could be talking about X2, I might not be. The odds of me talking about a game better than Mega Man X next are astronomically low. And if that doesn't describe just how incredible the game is, I don't know what will. Now get out of here, video's over.